When I look at world history since the 1500s, I think the most important development was the era of the two world wars. These wars didn't just change borders, they destroyed old empires, created new global powers, and exposed how dangerous modern ideologies have become. The primary sources and the warlords Hitler versus Stalin documentary just kind of help show why. So in the French propaganda poster we studied, Germany is shown as this barbaric god Thor, smashing the church in the city. And this image was designed to make the German enemy seem almost inhumane, so civilians would come together and help support the war. Another poster, the American Let's End It Quick with Liberty Bonds, uses a woman in front of flames to push people emotionally into funding the war. Both posters show how governments pulled entire societies, so men, women, and families, all together into the conflict. But the paintings from after the war kind of reveal the deeper truth. John Nash's battlefield scene shows trenches as torn red wounds across the landscape, and Otto Dix's painting of wounded veterans shows men damaged and forgotten. These sources explain why people after World War I felt disillusioned and why many turned towards just these extreme political ideas. These ideas are laid out clearly in the World War II primary sources. So like in Mussolini's political and social doctrine of fascism, he rejects peace, democracy, and individual rights. He argues that life is duty and struggle, and that the state is everything. Hitler even goes on in Mein Kampf, his book. He claims that Aryans are the superior race, that mixing race is harmful, and that Jews are responsible for all of Germany's problems. He also argues for expansion into Eastern Europe, and these ideas shape his decisions during the war. And in the Warlords documentary, we see how Hitler believed he could conquer the USSR quickly and how he underestimated Stalin, and something that would ultimately cost him later on. The Japanese documentary, Cardinal Principles of the Japanese document, Cardinal Principles of the National Entity Japan, shows another just authoritarian ideology, and it teaches absolute loyalty to the emperor. It criticizes Western individualism, and it praises self-sacrifice, even death for the nation. And this kind of helps explain Japanese militarism and just their aggressive expansion into Eastern Europe. I think together these three documents show how fascism, Nazism, and just the Japanese like ultra-nationalism just rejected democracy and human rights and instead used race, loyalty, and violence to justify war. The long-term consequences of the world wars are what I believe is what matters most from them. They ended the age of European empires and shifted world powers to the United States and the Soviet Union, which ended up setting up the Cold War. They accelerated decolonization, as shown by the poster celebrating France's Army of Africa, which reminds us that millions of colonial soldiers fought in the wars and later demanded independence. The wars also pushed the world towards new ideas about human rights, international law, and just global cooperation through the United Nations. Other developments like industrialism or imperialism were important, but the world wars combined all these forces and then reshaped the world in a totally new direction. That's why using the propaganda posters, the Axis ideology documents, and the Warlord documentaries as evidence, I argue that the two world wars were the most important turning point in world history since the 1500s.